August 4th, 1962, Los Angeles. The clock reads 12:37 a.m. In the dim light of her bedroom at 5th Helena Drive, Marilyn Monroe sits on the edge of her bed, staring at the telephone in her trembling hands. Her blonde hair, usually perfectly styled, falls loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes, those famous eyes that captivated millions, are red from crying and wide with fear. She dials a number she's memorized but rarely calls this late. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a sleepy voice answers. "Hello? Who is this?" "Sarah, it's me," Marilyn whispers, her voice barely audible. "I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Miss Monroe? It's almost 1 in the morning. Are you okay?" Marilyn's laugh is bitter, almost hysterical. "Okay? No, Sarah. I'm not okay. They know everything. They know about the diary, the phone calls, the threats I've been making, and I think they're going to do something about it tonight." Who are you talking about?" "The most powerful men in America, Sarah. The men who run this country, and I was foolish enough to think I could threaten them and survive." 9 hours later, Marilyn Monroe would be found dead. The official story would be simple: barbiturate overdose, probable suicide, a tragic end to a troubled life. But the truth of what happened in those final 24 hours would remain buried for decades, hidden beneath layers of lies, cover-ups, and convenient explanations. This is the story nobody was supposed to tell. This is Marilyn Monroe's last day alive. Saturday morning, August 3rd, 1962, started like many others for Marilyn Monroe. Which is to say, it started badly. She had barely slept, maybe 2 or 3 hours at most, and those hours were filled with nightmares that left her gasping for air when she finally opened her eyes around 9 in the morning. The house on 5th Helena Drive was modest by Hollywood standards, just a small Spanish-style bungalow tucked away in Brentwood. Marilyn had bought it earlier that year, her first real home that she owned outright. She'd been so proud of it, decorating every room herself, choosing white furniture and bright colors that reminded her of happiness and new beginnings. But lately, the house felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. She walked to the kitchen, her bare feet cold against the tile floor, and started making coffee. Her hands shook as she filled the pot with water. The shaking had been getting worse over the past few weeks, a side effect of the pills she was taking, or maybe from the stress, or perhaps from both. Dr. Greenson, her psychiatrist, kept adjusting her medications, but nothing seemed to help the anxiety that gripped her chest like a vice. The mail arrived around 9:30, dropped through the slot in the front door with a soft thud. Bills, mostly. A few letters from fans who somehow found her address. And then, at the bottom of the pile, an envelope with no return address, just her name written in block letters. Marilyn Monroe. Her stomach dropped. She knew what this was before she even opened it. She'd been getting these letters for 3 weeks now, ever since she'd made those phone calls, since she'd started talking to people she shouldn't have been talking to, asking questions about things that powerful people wanted to keep buried. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper with 7 words typed in the center. "Silence is golden. Choose it wisely." Marilyn sat down hard in the kitchen chair, the paper trembling in her hands. She wanted to cry, but she'd cried so much already that she wasn't sure she had any tears left. Instead, she felt something else rising in her chest, something that felt almost like anger, or maybe courage, or perhaps just exhaustion with being afraid all the time. She got up, walked to her bedroom, and pulled out the small red leather diary from beneath her mattress. This diary had become the most dangerous object in her possession, more dangerous than any weapon because of what it contained. Names, dates, conversations she'd overheard or participated in, details about President John F. Kennedy's private meetings, his discussions about Cuba and the Bay of Pigs, information about his brother Robert Kennedy's investigations into organized crime, and how those investigations mysteriously stopped when they got too close to certain powerful families. Marilyn had started keeping this diary almost 2 years ago, back when her affair with President Kennedy was still exciting, still filled with the romance and danger of secret meetings and whispered phone calls. She'd written down everything, not because she planned to use it against him, but because she was Marilyn Monroe, and writing was how she processed her feelings, how she made sense of a world that often made no sense at all. But then the affair ended. Not gradually, not with the gentle letting down that mature adults give each other, but abruptly, coldly, like a door slammed shut in her face. Jack Kennedy stopped taking her calls. Peter Lawford, the actor who'd introduced them and who served as their go-between, suddenly became unavailable, and when she persisted, when she tried to reach out through other channels, That's when Robert Kennedy showed up at her door. Bobby Kennedy was different from his brother. Where Jack was charming and smooth, Bobby was intense and serious. He'd come to her house in May, ostensibly to check on her welfare, but really to deliver a message. Stay away from the Kennedy family. Stop calling. Stop trying to make contact. And for God's sake, stop talking to reporters about your relationship with the president. Marilyn had laughed in his face. She was Marilyn Monroe. She didn't take orders from anyone. Not anymore. She'd told Bobby about the diary, about how much she knew, about how one phone call to the right journalist could destroy both Kennedy brothers' political careers. That's when she saw it, the look in Bobby's eyes that turned her blood cold. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was calculation. The look of a man doing cost-benefit analysis, weighing options, considering solutions to a problem that had just become significantly more complicated. Now, sitting in her kitchen with another threatening letter in front of her, Marilyn understood that she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd played a game she didn't understand with men who wrote the rules. And now she was paying the price. Around 10:30, her assistant Sarah Mackenzie arrived for the day. Sarah was young, only 24, bright and capable, and one of the few people Marilyn felt she could trust. The young woman took one look at Marilyn's face and knew something was wrong. "Miss Monroe, you look exhausted. Did you sleep at all last night?" Marilyn shook her head, pushing the threatening letter across the table. Sarah read it, her face going pale. "This is the fourth one this week. We need to go to the police." "And tell them what exactly?" Marilyn's voice was sharp with frustration. "That I'm being threatened because I had an affair with the President of the United States and his brother, and now they want me silenced? The police would laugh us out of the station, or worse, they'd make a phone call to someone in Washington, and then—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sarah sat down across from her, reaching out to take Marilyn's hand. "Then what do we do?" Marilyn was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she said, "I'm going to call Robert Slatzer. He's a journalist, someone I knew years ago, someone I can trust. I'm going to give him the diary, tell him everything, and let him decide what to do with the information. If something happens to me, at least the truth will be out there. If something happens to you—" Sarah's voice rose with alarm. "Miss Monroe, you're talking like I might not be alive much longer." Marilyn finished the sentence with a sad smile. "That's because I might not be, Sarah. These men don't make idle threats. They've killed before to protect their secrets, and they'll kill again if they have to." The two women sat in silence, the morning sun streaming through the kitchen windows, highlighting the fear and determination on both their faces. Dr. Ralph Greenson arrived at 2:15 p.m., 15 minutes late for their scheduled appointment. He was a distinguished-looking man in his early 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes, though Marilyn had begun to wonder lately if those eyes were quite as kind as they appeared. Dr. Greenson had been her psychiatrist for nearly 2 years, recommended by her previous analyst when she moved back to Los Angeles. At first, their sessions had been helpful. He listened, he offered insights, he prescribed medications that took the edge off her anxiety and helped her sleep. But lately, something had changed in their dynamic. He seemed more interested in controlling her behavior than understanding it, more focused on keeping her quiet and compliant than helping her heal. They sat in the living room, Marilyn on the white couch, Dr. Greenson in the armchair across from her. He opened his leather notebook, clicked his pen, and looked at her with what she supposed was professional concern. "How are you feeling today, Marilyn?"
How do you think I'm feeling, Ralph?
The use of his first name was deliberate, a small rebellion against the formality he insisted upon. "I'm being threatened. I can't sleep. I can't work because Fox Studios fired me from Something's Gotta Give for being unreliable. And the man I thought loved me won't even take my phone calls." Dr. Greenson made a note in his book. "You're still fixating on President Kennedy."
Fixating?
Marilyn felt her anger rising. "I'm not fixating, Ralph. I'm trying to process the fact that I was used, manipulated, and then discarded when I became inconvenient. That's not fixation. That's reality. Marilyn, we've discussed this. These feelings of persecution, these beliefs that powerful people are conspiring against you, these are symptoms of paranoid ideation brought on by your medication and stress." Paranoid ideation. Marilyn stood up, her voice rising. "I showed you the threatening letters. I told you about Bobby Kennedy coming here, warning me to stay quiet. How is that paranoia when it's actually happening?" Dr. Greenson remained calm, which only made Marilyn angrier. "Robert Kennedy is the Attorney General of the United States. He's in San Francisco right now giving speeches. The idea that he would come to Los Angeles to personally threaten an actress is frankly absurd. He was here 2 days ago." Marilyn was shouting now. "Sarah saw him. Mrs. Murray saw him. Are we all paranoid?" The doctor closed his notebook with a soft snap. "Marilyn, I'm concerned about your mental state. I think we need to increase your medication, Perhaps add something to help with these delusions. They're not delusions, damn it. Marilyn was crying now, frustrated tears streaming down her face. Why won't you believe me? Why won't anyone believe me? Dr. Greenson stood, walking over to his medical bag. I'm going to give you an injection, something to help you calm down and rest. You're exhausted, and exhaustion makes everything seem worse than it is. Marilyn backed away from him. I don't want an injection. I want you to listen to me. I want someone, anyone, to take me seriously. But Dr. Greenson was insistent, his voice taking on a harder edge. Marilyn, you need to rest. You're becoming hysterical, and if you don't calm down, I'll have no choice but to recommend hospitalization. The word hung in the air like a threat. Hospitalization. They'd done it to her before, years ago, committed her to a psychiatric facility against her will. It had been one of the most terrifying experiences of her life, trapped in a locked ward, treated like she was crazy when she was just sad and scared and overwhelmed. Fine, she said quietly, defeated. Give me the injection. Dr. Greenson administered the shot. Something he said was a mild sedative mixed with vitamins. Within minutes, Marilyn felt the world beginning to soften around the edges, her thoughts becoming slower, heavier. She lay back on the couch, her eyes closing. Before he left, Dr. Greenson spoke to Sarah in the hallway, his voice low but clear enough for Marilyn to hear through her drugged haze. I'm sending Mrs. Murray over tonight to stay with her. Under no circumstances is Marilyn to be left alone. She's in a fragile state and I'm worried about what she might do. Mrs. Eunice Murray. Marilyn hated that woman, had always hated her. Mrs. Murray wasn't just a housekeeper or companion. She was Dr. Greenson's spy, reporting back to him about everything Marilyn said and did. And now she would be here tonight, watching, listening, making sure Marilyn didn't do anything inconvenient like tell the truth. Marilyn woke from her drug-induced sleep around 6:30 p.m., her head foggy and her mouth dry. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across her bedroom walls. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, or what day it was. Then it all came rushing back, the threatening letter, the argument with Dr. Greenson, the injection. She got up slowly, her legs unsteady, and walked to the kitchen. Mrs. Murray was already there, sitting at the table, reading a magazine as if she belonged in Marilyn's house. The older woman looked up when Marilyn entered, her expression neutral and unreadable.
Good evening, Marilyn.
Dr. Greenson asked me to stay with you tonight. I've prepared some soup if you're hungry. Marilyn ignored the offer of food. I don't need a babysitter, Eunice. You can go home. I'm afraid I can't do that. Doctor's orders. Mrs. Murray's voice was pleasant but firm, the tone of someone who would not be swayed by argument or pleading. Marilyn felt trapped in her own home. She retreated to her bedroom, closing the door behind her. She needed to think, to plan. The diary was still hidden under her mattress, but for how much longer? If Dr. Greenson suspected she was planning to go public with information about the Kennedys, he would search the house, find the diary, and it would disappear just like everything else that threatened powerful men. She had to act tonight. It was her last chance. Around 7:30 m, Marilyn picked up the phone and called Peter Lawford. Peter was actor, producer, and more importantly, he was married to Patricia Kennedy, making him President Kennedy's brother-in-law. He'd been the one to introduce Marilyn to Jack in the first place, back when it all seemed so exciting and romantic. Peter, it's Marilyn. Marilyn, how are you, darling? Peter's voice had that false cheerfulness that people use when they're talking to someone they're afraid might be unstable. I need to see Bobby, tonight. It's urgent. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Bobby's in San Francisco, Marilyn. He's giving a speech to the Bar Association tomorrow morning. Don't lie to me, Peter. I know he's in Los Angeles. I know he's been here all week. Another pause, longer this time. When Peter spoke again, his voice had changed, become colder. Marilyn, you need to let this go. You need to stop making these phone calls. Stop these accusations. You're going to get yourself in serious trouble. Is that a threat, Peter? It's friendly advice from someone who cares about you. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have pimped me out to your brother-in-law and then abandoned me when I became inconvenient. Marilyn heard Peter sigh on the other end. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. You're not well, Marilyn. Everyone knows you're not well. Maybe you should listen to Dr. Greenson and get some rest. She slammed the phone down, her hands shaking with rage and fear. Everyone was in on it. Everyone was part of the conspiracy to silence her, to make her look crazy so that if she did speak out, no one would believe her. She tried calling her friend Norman Roston, a poet and writer she'd known for years. No answer. She tried calling her former husband Joe DiMaggio, the one man she knew still cared about her. The line was busy. She tried 3 more times over the next hour. Busy, busy, busy. Finally, around 8:45 p.m., she called Sarah Mackenzie at home. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. It's important. Of course, Miss Monroe. What is it? If something happens to me, if I don't answer your calls tomorrow, or if you hear that something's happened, I need you to go to the police. No, not the police. Go to the newspapers. Tell them about the diary. Tell them about the Kennedys. Tell them everything I've told you over the past few weeks. Promise me. Miss Monroe, you're scaring me. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me, Sarah. I promise. But please call me in the morning, okay? As soon as you wake up. I will. Thank you, Sarah. You've been a good friend. After she hung up, Marilyn sat on her bed, holding the red diary in her hands. She opened it to a random page and read her own handwriting from 18 months ago. Jack called tonight. We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. He makes me laugh. He makes me feel special. Is this what love feels like? She closed the diary, tears streaming down her face. How naive she'd been. How stupid to think that a man like John F. Kennedy could love a woman like her, could see past the image and the fame to the real person underneath. She'd been a fantasy to him, a secret thrill, never real, never substantial enough to matter. At 10 p.m., Mrs. Murray knocked on Marilyn's bedroom door. Time for your medication, Marilyn. Marilyn opened the door and looked at the pills in Mrs. Murray's outstretched hand. There were more than usual, at least 5 or 6 different tablets in different colors and shapes. What are all these? Dr. Greenson's instructions. He wants to make sure you sleep well tonight. Marilyn took the pills and the glass of water, putting the tablets in her mouth and swallowing the water. But she'd learned a trick during her years of dealing with studios and doctors who wanted to control her. She held the pills under her tongue, swallowed only the water, and then spit the tablets into a tissue as soon as Mrs. Murray left the room. She lay in bed, pretending to sleep, listening to the sounds of the house. Mrs. Murray moving around in the guest room, the television playing softly in the living room. The ordinary sounds of a Saturday night that felt anything but ordinary. Around 11:30, she heard a car pull up outside, then another. Voices, low and male, speaking to Mrs. Murray. Marilyn's heart began to race. She got out of bed silently, creeping to her bedroom door, and opening it just a crack. She could see into the living room. Mrs. Murray was there, and with her were 2 men Marilyn didn't recognize. They were dressed in dark suits, professional looking, and they were talking in voices too low for her to make out the words. Then Mrs. Murray said something that made Marilyn's blood run cold. She's in the bedroom. She took the sedatives about 30 minutes ago. She should be unconscious by now. One of the men nodded. The doctor said to make it look natural. An accidental overdose. She's been taking pills for years. Everyone knows she's unstable. It won't be hard to sell. Marilyn backed away from the door, her hand over her mouth to stifle the scream building in her throat. They were going to kill her. Tonight. In her own home, and they were going to make it look like suicide or an accident. She looked around her bedroom desperately. The window was too small to climb through. The door was the only way out, and they were on the other side of it. She was trapped. She grabbed the red diary from under her mattress, thinking frantically. If they found it on her body, they would destroy it. But if she could hide it somewhere they wouldn't think to look. She heard footsteps approaching her bedroom door. There was no more time. Marilyn ran to her closet, pulled out a shoebox, stuffed the diary inside, and shoved it to the back of the top shelf behind other boxes and bags. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best she could do in the seconds she had left. The door opened. Mrs. Murray came in first, followed by the 2 men. Marilyn backed up against the wall, her voice coming out in a terrified whisper. Please, please don't do this. One of the men spoke, his voice not unkind, but absolutely firm. Miss Monroe, we're here to help you. You've been very upset lately, making threats against important people. We can't let you continue. I won't say anything. I'll keep quiet, I promise. But even as she said it, she knew it didn't matter. They couldn't take the risk. She knew too much, and she'd shown that she was willing to use what she knew. Men like the Kennedys didn't leave loose ends, didn't take chances with their reputations and their power. Mrs. Murray pulled a syringe from her pocket, filled with a clear liquid. This will be quick, Marilyn. You won't feel any pain. Marilyn tried to run, but the men grabbed her, holding her down on the bed. She screamed, but one of them clamped a hand over her mouth. She felt the needle enter her arm, felt the cold liquid entering her bloodstream. Once, twice, 3 times. Massive doses of barbiturates, enough to stop her heart, enough to kill her within minutes. The world started spinning, her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was Mrs. Murray's face looking down at her, expressionless and cold. The last thing she thought was, I should have given the diary to Sarah. I should have done it today. And then Marilyn Monroe, the most famous actress in the world, the woman who had captivated millions with her beauty and charm and vulnerability, died on her bed, murdered by people who saw her only as a problem to be eliminated. The men worked quickly and efficiently. They arranged Marilyn's body on the bed, made it look like she died peacefully in her sleep. They scattered empty pill bottles around the nightstand, they cleaned up any signs of a struggle, and then they left, disappearing into the Los Angeles night. Their mission accomplished. Mrs. Murray waited until 3:30 a.m. to call the police. When they arrived, she gave an Oscar-worthy performance of shock and grief, telling them she'd woken up and noticed light under Marilyn's door, had gone to check and found her unresponsive. The police, some of whom had probably been warned this call was coming, accepted the story without much question. Movie star, history of depression and drug use, found dead with empty pill bottles nearby. Open and shut case. Tragic, but not suspicious. The news broke on Sunday morning. Marilyn Monroe dead at 36. The headlines screamed about tragedy and wasted talent and the dark side of fame. Newspapers ran retrospectives of her life, her movies, her troubled marriages. Everyone had a theory, an opinion, a memory to share. But nobody talked about the Red Diary. Nobody mentioned Robert Kennedy's visit to her home. Nobody questioned why Marilyn Monroe, who had just signed a new contract with Fox Studios and was planning her comeback, would suddenly decide to kill herself on a random Saturday night. Sarah Mackenzie tried. She went to the police the next day, telling them about the diary, about the threats, about the phone call she'd received from Marilyn just hours before her death. The detective listened politely, took notes, and then explained to her that Miss Monroe had been mentally unstable, that she often made up stories, that creating conspiracy theories wouldn't bring her back or honor her memory. Sarah tried the newspapers next, but they weren't interested either. The official story was cleaner, simpler, more saleable. Tortured star dies tragically young. That's what sold papers, not complicated tales of political intrigue and conspiracy. Over the years, Sarah would give interviews, write letters, try to keep the truth alive. Some people believed her, most didn't. She became known as one of those conspiracy theorists, the kind of person who couldn't accept that sometimes tragic things just happen without shadowy forces being responsible. But Sarah knew what she knew. She'd heard Marilyn's voice that night, heard the fear and desperation. She'd seen the evidence, knew about the diary, and she'd lived with the guilt of not doing more, of not insisting that Marilyn leave her house that night, of not calling the police when she had the chance. The Red Diary was never found. The police searched Marilyn's house after her death but claimed no such diary existed. Either they didn't look hard enough, or someone had gotten there first and removed it. Decades later, when true crime investigators and historians went looking for the diary, conducting their own searches of the house and interviewing everyone connected to Marilyn's final days, they came up empty. Some believe the diary was destroyed the night Marilyn died. Others think it's still out there somewhere, hidden in a private collection, or locked in a government vault, too dangerous to ever be released. A few optimists believe it will surface someday, that the truth will finally come out. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter anymore. The people who murdered Marilyn Monroe are dead now. John F. Kennedy was assassinated 15 months later in Dallas. Robert Kennedy was shot and killed in 1968. Peter Lawford drank himself to death. Dr. Greenson died in 1979. Mrs. Murray lived until 1994, never once admitting to anything more than finding her famous employer dead. Justice, if you can call it that, was served in its own way. What remains is the memory of Marilyn Monroe herself. Not the men who used her, not the people who killed her, not the conspiracy or the cover-up. Just Marilyn, the woman who wanted to be taken seriously, who wanted to be loved for more than her looks, who wanted to matter. In the end, she did matter. She mattered more than any of them, because 60 years after her death, we're still talking about her, still fascinated by her, still mourning the loss of what she could have been if she'd been allowed to live. The powerful men who killed her thought they were protecting themselves, protecting their legacies. But history remembers them as flawed, corrupt, and human. History remembers Marilyn Monroe as a legend, an icon, a symbol of beauty and tragedy that transcends the sordid circumstances of her death. Maybe that's its own kind of justice. Maybe that's the truth that matters most. If this story made you think about the price of fame and the abuse of power, subscribe to Hidden Legends Stories. We uncover the real stories behind the legends, the truth behind the myths. Leave a comment. Do you think Marilyn Monroe committed suicide, or was she murdered? What do you believe happened that night? Next time, we'll explore another legend whose death raised more questions than answers. Until then, remember, the truth may be buried, but it never truly dies.